Prince William stood by the tall windows of Kensington Palace, staring out at the grey London sky. The morning felt heavy, just like his heart. Raindrops slowly made their way down the glass, matching the sadness he felt inside. He had not slept. Well, for weeks now, and it showed on his face. Dark circles under his eyes told a story of worry and fear that no royal training had prepared him for. Behind him, Kate sat in her favorite armchair, the one she always chose when she needed to think. Her hands were folded tightly in her lap, and she had been quiet for almost an hour. The silence in the room was thick and uncomfortable. Neither of them knew what to say anymore. They had said everything that could be said, asked every question that could be asked, and still nothing had changed. Their youngest child had been sick for 3 months now. What started as simple tiredness had grown into something much more serious. The little one would sleep for hours during the day, barely eat, and sometimes seemed confused about simple things. At first, their family doctor said it was just a virus that would pass. But weeks went by, and their child only got worse. Kate remembered the first time she really got scared. She had gone to wake their child for breakfast, and it took several minutes of gentle shaking before those sweet little eyes opened. Gosh, even then, the child looked at her like she was a stranger. That look haunted Kate's dreams now. She had called William immediately, her voice shaking as she tried to explain what had happened. William had rushed home from his royal duties that day. He found Kate sitting on their child's bed, watching every breath, counting every heartbeat. The sight of his strong wife looking so fragile and scared made his own fear grow stronger. He sat beside her, and they held hands without speaking, both thinking the same terrible thoughts they were afraid to say out loud. The next weeks became a blur of doctor visits and medical tests. They went to the best children's hospital in London, then 2 specialists in different parts of England. Each doctor asked the same questions, ran the same tests, and gave the same answer. They could not find anything wrong. All the blood tests came back normal. The brain scans showed nothing unusual, according to every medical test. Their child was perfectly healthy, but William and Kate could see with their own eyes that their child was not healthy. Each day brought new worries. Their little one would forget simple words, struggle to walk upstairs, and fall asleep while playing with toys. The bright, energetic child they knew was disappearing little by little, and no one could tell them. Why? Kate started keeping a diary of symptoms. She wrote down everything she noticed, every change, every small detail that might help a doctor understand what was happening. She filled page after page with careful notes about sleep patterns, eating habits, and behavior changes. William would read her notes each night, hoping to find some clue that the doctors had missed. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal. When they were in public, royal duties continued. Despite their personal crisis, they had to attend charity events, meet with government officials, and smile for photographers. Kate became an expert at hiding her red eyes with makeup. William learned to give speeches while his mind was completely focused on his sick child at home. Their other children knew something was wrong, but William and Kate tried to protect them from the full truth, explained that their sibling was not feeling well and needed extra rest. The older children were patient and kind, often drawing pictures to cheer up their sick brother or sister. These small acts of love made William and Kate both proud and heartbroken at the same time. At night, when the palace was quiet and their royal duties were finished, William and Kate would sit together in their child's room. They took turns sleeping. In the chair beside the bed, afraid to leave their little one alone even for a few hours. Sometimes they would whisper to each other about their fears, but mostly they just sat in worried silence. Kate often found herself praying, even though she had never been particularly religious before. She would ask God, the universe, anyone who might be listening, to help her child get better. She promised she would give up anything, do anything, if only her baby could be healthy again. William, raised with more formal religious training, found himself attending private chapel services more often, seeking comfort in familiar prayers and rituals. The strain began to show in other parts of their lives. William became short-tempered with his staff, snapping at people over small mistakes that normally would not bother him. Kate stopped eating regular meals, surviving on cups of tea and whatever food she could manage between caring for their child. Friends and family members noticed the changes, but were not sure how to help. Royal advisors suggested they take a break from their official duties, but William and Kate refused. They felt that keeping busy with their work was the only thing preventing them from falling apart completely. Their public appearances became a form of escape, few hours where they could focus on other people's problems instead of their own overwhelming worry. As the weeks passed without answers, both William and Kate felt more helpless than they had ever felt in their lives. They had access to the best medical care in the world, unlimited resources, and connections to specialists everywhere. But none of that mattered when their child continued to get sicker, and no one could explain why. The uncertainty was perhaps the worst part. If they had known what was wrong, they could have made plans, prepared for treatment, found ways to cope. But not knowing left them in a constant state of fear and anxiety. Every morning brought the hope that this might be the day their child would wake up feeling better. And every evening brought the disappointment when that did not happen. Kate started researching rare diseases on her own, reading medical journals late into the night. William worried about her obsession with finding answers, but he understood it. Doing something, anything, felt better than sitting helplessly and waiting for doctors to figure things out. Their love for each other grew stronger during this difficult time, but it was tested in ways they had never imagined. They were both scared, tired, and desperate for solutions that seemed impossible to find. The phone rang at 6 a.m, waking both William and Kate from their restless sleep. Kate answered quickly, hoping not to wake their sick child in the next room. It was Dr. Harrison from Great Ormond Street Hospital calling with results. From the latest round of tests they had done the week before, Kate's heart pounded as she listened to the doctor's voice. William sat up in bed, watching his wife's face for any sign of good news. But Kate's expression remained worried, as Dr. Harrison explained that once again, all the tests had come back normal. There was still no medical explanation for their child's condition. After hanging up the phone, Kate sat quietly for several minutes. William reached over and took her hand, but neither of them spoke. They had heard the same disappointing news so many times that they were running out of hope. Their child had been sick for 4 months now, and was getting weaker every day that morning. William had to attend a meeting with government officials about climate change policies. As he got dressed in his formal suit, he looked at himself in the mirror and barely recognized the man staring back. His face looked older, his eyes were tired, and his usual confident smile was nowhere to be found. He thought about canceling the meeting, but Kate encouraged him to go. During the meeting, William found it almost impossible to concentrate on the discussions about carbon emissions and environmental policies. His mind kept drifting to his child. At home, wondering if Kate was managing okay on her own, he caught himself checking his phone every few minutes, waiting for updates that never came. Meanwhile, Kate spent the morning researching rare childhood diseases on her laptop. She had filled several notebooks with information about different conditions that might explain their child's symptoms. Her desk was covered with printed articles from medical websites, phone numbers of specialists around the world, and lists of questions to ask doctors. She called a specialist in Germany who had been recommended by a friend. The conversation lasted almost an hour, with Kate carefully describing every symptom and change she had observed. The German doctor listened patiently and promised to send information about some experimental treatments that were being tested in Europe. Their child woke up around noon, which was becoming normal since the illness began, before getting sick. This little one was always the first to wake up in the family, full of energy and excitement for each new day. Now sleeping 12 or 14 hours was common, and even after so much rest, there was no energy for playing or laughing. Kate helped their child get dressed, which took much longer than it used to. Simple tasks like putting on socks or brushing teeth had become difficult and tiring. Kate stayed patient and encouraging, but inside her heart was breaking as she watched her once independent child struggle with such basic things. They went downstairs for lunch, moving slowly and carefully. Their child held tightly to the handrail, something that had never been necessary before. Kate noticed how thin those little arms had become, how pale the skin looked, and how those bright eyes seemed dimmer each day. At lunch, their child managed to eat only a few spoonfuls of soup before pushing the bowl away. Kate tried offering different foods, all the old favorites that used to bring such joy. But nothing seemed appealing anymore, and eating had become a struggle that left everyone frustrated. William returned home in the early afternoon to find Kate crying quietly in the kitchen. She was holding a photo from their family vacation the previous summer, when all their children had been healthy and happy. The difference between that smiling, energetic child in the photo and the weak little one upstairs was heartbreaking. William held Kate while she cried, feeling his own tears starting to fall. They rarely let themselves break down like this, but sometimes the sadness was too heavy to carry alone. They talked about their fears, the thoughts that kept them awake at night, and the growing desperation they both felt. That evening, they decided to call Kate's mother for advice. The older woman had raised 4 children and had always been a source of wisdom during difficult times. She listened carefully as Kate described their situation, occasionally asking gentle questions about symptoms and treatments they had tried. Kate's mother suggested they consider looking into medical centers outside of England. She had read about some innovative treatments being developed in other countries, places where doctors might have different approaches to mysterious illnesses. The idea had occurred to William and Kate before, but they had been hesitant to travel with their sick child. After dinner, William made phone calls to several international medical centers. He spoke with doctors in Switzerland, Germany, and the United States, explaining their situation and asking about possible treatments. Most of the conversations were discouraging, with doctors saying they could not help without examining the child in person. But one call was different. Dr. Muller, from a medical center in Zurich, listened carefully to William's description of the symptoms. She asked detailed questions about the timeline of the illness and the treatments that had already been tried. At the end of the conversation, she said something that gave William the first real hope he had felt in months. Dr. Muller explained that she had been working with a small group of children who had similar symptoms. While she could not promise anything, she had seen some success with a new treatment approach that was not yet available in England. She invited them to bring their child to Switzerland for evaluation. William felt his heart racing as he wrote down all the information Dr. Muller provided. Treatment would require staying in Switzerland for several months, and there were no guarantees it would work. But for the first time since this nightmare began, someone was offering them real hope instead of just more tests that showed nothing. When he told Kate about the phone call, she started crying again. But these were different tears, tears of relief mixed with fear and desperate hope. They stayed up late that night, talking about the decision they faced. Taking their sick child to another country for experimental treatment was scary, but watching their little one fade away was even scarier. They knew they had to try everything possible to save their child, no matter how frightening or uncertain the path ahead might be. The decision to go to Switzerland kept William and Kate awake for 3 straight nights. They sat in their bedroom after everyone else was sleeping, going over the same questions again and again. Was it safe to travel with their sick child? What if the treatment made things worse? What if they were putting their little one through unnecessary suffering for nothing? Kate had filled another notebook with information about Dr. Muller and the medical center in Zurich. She read everything she could find about the experimental treatment, trying to understand the risks and benefits. The treatment involved a combination of medications that had never been used together before, along with special therapies that were only available at a few centers in the world. William, worried about the practical details, how would they manage their royal duties while living in another country for months? Who would take care of their other children? How could they keep their trip secret from the media? Who would turn their family's medical crisis into front page news if they found out on Thursday morning? They had another conversation with Dr. Muller. This time, Kate asked the hard questions she had been afraid to ask before. What exactly would happen if the treatment failed? How many other children had tried this approach? What were the chances their child would get better? Dr. Muller was honest about the uncertainties. She explained that only 12 children had received this treatment so far, and the results were mixed. Some had improved significantly, others had seen no change, and one child had experienced serious side effects that required stopping the treatment early. But she also said that without trying something new, Children with this mysterious condition usually continued to get worse. After the phone call, William and Kate looked at each other across their kitchen table. They both knew what they had to do, even though it terrified them. Their child was already suffering, already getting weaker every day. At least in Switzerland, there was a chance for improvement. Kate called her mother first, asking if she could come to London to help with their other children. Without asking for details, her mother agreed immediately. She had seen how worried Kate looked during recent visits. She knew her daughter needed support. William then had the difficult task of explaining the situation to his royal staff. He told them he needed to take extended leave for family medical reasons, but he could not share the specific details. His private secretary understood immediately and began making arrangements to postpone or reassign his official duties. The hardest conversation was with their other children. William and Kate sat them down in the family room and explained that their sick sibling, they needed special medical treatment that was only available in another country. They would all be going to Switzerland. Together for what might be several months, their oldest child asked intelligent questions about the treatment and whether their sibling would get better. The middle child worried about missing school and friends. But all of them showed the same courage and maturity that made William and Kate proud every day. They were ready to support their family in whatever way was needed. Making travel arrangements proved more complicated than William had expected. They needed to coordinate with security teams, arrange for medical equipment to be transported, accommodations near the Swiss Medical Center. Everything had to be done quietly to avoid media attention. Kate spent hours packing medical records, medications, and comfort items for their sick child. She included favorite toys, special blankets, and books that might provide familiar comfort. In a strange place, she also packed her notebooks full of symptom tracking and research, hoping they might be useful to the Swiss doctors. The week before they were scheduled to leave, their child had a particularly bad day. The little one slept almost 18 hours and seemed confused when awake, asking for people who were not there and forgetting where the bathroom was located. Kate found herself wondering if they were making this journey too late. William arranged for a private medical transport to take them to Switzerland. The plane was equipped with emergency medical equipment and staffed with a pediatric nurse who specialized in caring for seriously ill children during travel. Every detail was planned to make the journey as safe and comfortable as possible. There. Last night in London, Kate sat beside their sick child's bed, watching the peaceful, sleeping face and wondering what the next few months would bring. She whispered promises that everything would be okay. Even though she was not sure she believed them herself, William checked and double-checked all their travel documents, medical records, and emergency contact information. He had arranged for daily updates to be sent to their family doctor in London and had backup plans for every possible complication he could imagine. Kate's mother arrived early that morning to say goodbye and to take charge of the other children. The farewell was emotional but brief, as William and Kate did not want to wake their sick child earlier than necessary for the journey. The ride to the private airfield was quiet. Their child slept in Kate's arms while William stared out the window at the familiar London streets, wondering when they would see them again. He thought about all the royal duties he was leaving behind, all the people who were counting on him. But he knew his first responsibility was to his family. At the airport, the medical team took charge of getting their child safely onto the plane. Kate climbed aboard carrying her bag of medical supplies and comfort items, while William followed with their suitcases and the stack of medical records they were bringing to Dr. Mueller. As the plane lifted off from London, Kate reached for William's hand. They were leaving everything familiar behind, gambling their child's life on an experimental treatment in a foreign country. The fear was overwhelming, but so was their determination to try everything possible to save their little one. Looking down at the disappearing English countryside, William felt like they were jumping into the unknown with nothing but hope to catch them. But sometimes he realized hope was the only thing left when all other options had been exhausted. The plane landed in Zurich on a cold Tuesday morning in February. Kate had barely slept during the flight, spending most of the time watching their child's breathing and checking for any signs of distress. William had tried to rest but found himself staring out the small window, wondering if they had made the right decision. An ambulance was waiting at the airport to take them directly to the medical center. The Swiss medical team was professional and kind, speaking perfect English, and making sure their child was comfortable during the short drive through the snowy city streets. Kate held her little one close, whispering reassuring words as they passed unfamiliar buildings and signs in German. Dr. Mueller met them at the hospital entrance. She was younger than Kate had expected, probably in her early 40s, with kind eyes and a calm manner that immediately put them at ease. She spoke softly to their child, introducing herself and explaining they were going to do everything possible to help with the feeling better. The first week in Switzerland was overwhelming. Their child underwent more medical tests than they had ever experienced before. Dr. Mueller wanted to understand every aspect of the condition. Before starting the experimental treatment, blood samples were taken every day, brain scans were repeated, and specialists examined every part of their little one's body. William and William. Kate stayed in a small apartment near the hospital that the medical center had arranged for families of patients. It was simple, but comfortable, with a kitchen where Kate could prepare familiar foods and a living room where William could work on his laptop when needed. The apartment felt strange after living in palaces, but they were grateful for the privacy and quiet. The hardest part was watching their child go through so many medical procedures. Each test required preparation and recovery time, and their little one was already so weak and tired. Kate would sit beside the hospital bed, reading stories and singing quiet songs, while William paced the hallways talking to doctors and asking endless questions about the treatment plan. Dr. Mueller explained that the experimental treatment would take at least 3 months, possibly longer, depending on how their child responded. The first phase involved new medications that would be given through an IV line several times each day. The second phase would add special therapies, including physical exercises and brain stimulation techniques that had shown promise in similar cases. Kate learned the hospital routines quickly. She memorized the names of all the nurses, figured out which elevators were fastest, and discovered the best places to get coffee when she needed a break. William struggled more with the adjustment, feeling useless and frustrated that he could not do more to help his child get better. Their child's condition seemed to stabilize during the first few weeks, which Dr. Mueller said was a good sign. The dangerous downward spiral they had experienced in London appeared to have stopped. There were no dramatic improvements yet, but at least things were not getting worse. Living in Switzerland was different from anything William and Kate had experienced before. For the first time in years, they could walk down the street without being recognized or followed by photographers. Kate discovered she enjoyed grocery shopping in the small Swiss market near their apartment, choosing fresh bread and local cheese. Without bodyguards or royal protocol, William found it strange to have so much free time. His days in London were usually scheduled from morning until night with official duties and meetings. In Zurich, his only responsibility was being present. For his family, he spent hours reading to their child, playing quiet games, and having long conversations with Kate about their hopes and fears. The experimental treatment officially began on their 4th week in Switzerland. Their child had to spend most of each day in the hospital, connected to 4 machines that delivered the new medications slowly and carefully. The medical team monitored every vital sign, watching for both positive changes and dangerous side effects. Kate rarely left the hospital during treatment days. She brought books, puzzles, and art supplies to keep their child entertained during the long hours of medical procedures. William would join them after finishing phone calls with London, updating his staff and family on their progress without revealing specific medical details. The first sign of improvement came after 6 weeks of treatment. Her child woke up one morning and asked for breakfast, something that had not happened in months. The little voice was still weak, but there was a spark of interest in food that had been missing for so long. Kate cried with joy as she watched her child eat a full bowl of cereal for the first time since the illness began. Dr. Mueller was cautiously optimistic about the progress. She explained that recovery from this type of condition was usually very slow, with small improvements happening gradually over many months. She warned them not to expect too much too quickly, but she was pleased with the positive changes they were seeing. William called his mother to share the good news, being careful not to say too much over the phone. The Queen had been worried about her grandson and was relieved to hear that the treatment seemed to be helping. She promised to continue managing any questions from the media about their extended absence from royal duties. Their child began staying awake for longer periods during the day, showing interest in toys and books that had been ignored for months. The physical therapy sessions that were part of the treatment helped with coordination and strength. Small victories like walking across the room or drawing a picture became major celebrations for the whole family. Kate started keeping a new journal, this time recording positive changes instead of worrying symptoms. She wrote about their child's first laugh in months, the day those little arms felt strong enough for a real hug, the morning when bright eyes looked at her with full recognition and awareness, living away from their royal responsibilities, gave William and Kate a chance to focus entirely on being parents. They rediscovered simple pleasures like reading bedtime stories, playing card games, and having family conversations without the pressure of public duties or media attention. As winter turned to spring in Switzerland, their child's health continued to improve slowly but steadily. Experimental treatment was working better than anyone had dared to hope. Spring in Switzerland brought changes that William and Kate had almost forgotten were possible. Their child was now awake for most of the day, asking questions and showing curiosity about the world around them.
Oh.
The little voice that had been barely a whisper for months was getting stronger, and those bright eyes were full of life again. Dr. Mueller was amazed by the progress. During their weekly meetings, she would review test results and compare them to the initial scans from when they first arrived. The improvements were clear and measurable. Brain function was returning to normal levels, muscle strength was increasing, and energy levels were the best they had been in almost a year. Kate had learned to be cautiously hopeful. After months of disappointment and fear, she was afraid to believe that their nightmare might actually be ending. But every day brought new small miracles that were harder to ignore. Their child could now walk upstairs without help, remembered the names of favorite toys, and had enough energy to play for hours at a time. William found himself smiling more often than he had in months. He would watch their child coloring pictures, or building with blocks, activities that had seemed impossible just weeks before. The simple joy of seeing his little one act like a normal, healthy child again filled him with gratitude that sometimes brought tears to his eyes. The medical team in Zurich had become like family during their 3-month stay. The nurses knew their child's favorite snacks and which stories were most requested at bedtime. Dr. Mueller spent countless hours answering William and Kate's questions, always patient and encouraging, even when they asked the same things. Over and over again, as their child's health improved, William and Kate began making plans for their return to London. They were eager to reunite with their other children and to resume their royal duties. But they were also nervous about leaving the safety and routine they had established in Switzerland. Dr. Mueller recommended they stay for 1 more month to make sure the improvements were stable. She wanted to gradually reduce some of the medications and monitor how their child responded to fewer treatments. This final phase of recovery would determine whether the healing was truly permanent or if they would need ongoing medical support. Kate called her mother every few days now, sharing good news instead of worried updates. Her mother had been caring for their other children beautifully, but everyone was ready for the family to be together again. The children had been patient and understanding. They missed their parents and their sick sibling terribly. Their child began asking about home, remembering details about their bedroom in London, and requesting favorite foods that were not available in Switzerland. These conversations made William and Kate realize how much their little one had missed during the months of illness. Simple memories of family life had been lost in the fog of sickness, but were now returning with surprising clarity. William started having longer phone conversations with his royal staff, preparing for his return to official duties. Months of charity events, government meetings, and public appearances had been postponed or handled by other family members. He felt guilty about being away for so long, but he knew he had made the right choice for his family. The experimental treatment was officially completed after 4 months in Switzerland. Dr. Mueller scheduled final tests to document their child's recovery and to add this success story to her research data. The results were better than anyone had expected when they first arrived as a desperate family seeking help. Kate packed their belongings with mixed emotions. She was excited to go home, but sad to leave the place where their child had been given. A second chance at life? The small apartment had been a refuge during the darkest period of their lives, and she would always be grateful for the safety and healing they had found in Switzerland. Their last day at the medical center was emotional. For everyone involved, the medical team had grown attached to their little patient, celebrating each milestone of recovery over the past months. Dr. Mueller gave them detailed instructions for ongoing care and promised to stay in touch to monitor their child's continued progress. The flight back to London felt completely different from their desperate journey to Switzerland months earlier. Their child was alert and excited during the trip, looking out the airplane windows and asking questions about the clouds and cities below. Kate and William could barely believe they were the same parents who had left London in fear and desperation as they flew over the English countryside. William thought about everything they had learned during their time away. Living without royal duties and public attention had shown them what really mattered in life. Their love for each other and their children was stronger than ever, and they had discovered inner strength they never knew they possessed. Kate watched their child draw pictures of the airplane and the mountains they could see below. Those small hands were steady now, and the concentration required for drawing had returned completely. She thought about all the medical appointments, sleepless nights, and moments of despair they had endured to reach this point. The pilot announced they would be landing at London in 30 minutes. William and Kate looked at each other and smiled, both thinking the same thing. They were bringing home a healthy, happy child who had been given back to them when they had almost lost hope. The experimental treatment in Switzerland had not just saved their child's life, it had saved their whole family. Their child pressed against the airplane window, excited to see London appearing below. The little voice asked questions about which buildings they could see and how much longer until they would be home. These were the kinds of normal, curious questions that healthy children ask. Questions that William and Kate had missed hearing for almost a year as the plane began its descent toward London. Kate reached for William's hand. They had survived the worst experience of their lives and were returning home with their miracle. Soon they would walk through the doors of Kensington Palace as a complete, healthy family once again. The car pulled through the gates of Kensington Palace on a bright Monday morning in June. William sat in the front seat, his heart beating faster as they approached the familiar building that had been their home for so many years. Kate held their recovered child on her lap, both of them looking out the windows at the gardens and pathways they had missed so much. Their child pointed excitedly at the playground visible through the trees, asking if they could go there later to play. The innocent enthusiasm in that little voice made Kate's eyes fill with tears of joy. 6 months ago, their child could barely stay awake for more than a few hours. Now those same bright eyes were taking in every detail of home with curiosity and energy. William felt his hands shaking slightly as he got out of the car. The weight of everything they had been through, everything they had feared they might lose, suddenly felt overwhelming. He had carried their sick child out of this same door months ago, not knowing if they would ever return as a healthy family. Now he was about to carry that same child back inside, completely recovered and full of life. Kate gathered their bags and medical supplies. Though most of the medications were no longer needed, Dr. Mueller had reduced their child's treatment to just 1 small pill each day, a maintenance dose that would continue for another year. The contrast with the complicated medical equipment and multiple medications they had needed in Switzerland was remarkable. As they walked toward the palace entrance, Kate noticed how their child's steps were confident and steady. The little legs that had struggled to climb stairs just months ago were now practically bouncing with excitement. Their child was eager to see their bedroom, their toys, and most importantly, their siblings who had been waiting patiently for this reunion. William reached for the door handle and paused for a moment. This simple action, opening the door to their home, felt like the most important thing he had ever done. Behind this door was everything they had fought so hard to preserve: their family, their future, their second chance at the life they had almost lost. Kate stood beside him. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to cry freely. These were not tears of worry or fear, but tears of overwhelming relief and gratitude. Their child looked up at both parents with concern, asking why they were crying. Kate knelt down and explained that sometimes people cry when they are very, very happy. When William finally opened the door, the sound that greeted them was pure magic. Their other children came running from different parts of the palace, shouting. With excitement and joy, Kate's mother appeared behind them, her own eyes filled with tears as she saw the healthy, energetic child she had been praying for. The reunion was everything William and Kate dreamed about during their darkest moments. In Switzerland, their children hugged each other tightly, all talking at once about things they wanted to share and games they wanted to play together. The palace hallways that had been quiet and sad for so many months were suddenly filled with laughter and excited voices. Their recovered child ran from room to room, rediscovering favorite toys and books that had been forgotten during the illness. Each rediscovered treasure brought squeals of delight and requests to play immediately. William and Kate followed behind, amazed by the energy and enthusiasm they were witnessing. Kate's mother had prepared a special welcome home lunch with all of their child's favorite foods. The little one ate with an appetite that would have seemed impossible just weeks ago, chattering between bites about the airplane ride and the mountains in Switzerland. The normal, healthy behavior was still miraculous to William and Kate, who remembered when getting their child to eat, even a few spoonfuls, had been a daily struggle. The palace staff members, who had been worried about the family for months, stopped by throughout the day to welcome them home. The gardener brought flowers from the garden that had bloomed while they were away. The cook had prepared special treats. Everyone wanted to see for themselves that the little one was truly healthy and happy again. That evening, William and Kate sat in their bedroom, finally alone together after the excitement of homecoming. Their child was sleeping peacefully in the next room, surrounded by favorite stuffed animals and familiar blankets. The sound of normal, healthy breathing through the baby monitor was music to their ears. They talked quietly about everything they had learned during their months away from home. The experience had changed them both in ways they were still discovering. They had learned that love was stronger than fear, that hope could survive even in the darkest moments, that their family bond was unbreakable. Kate looked through the medical journals and research notes she had collected during their child's illness. She planned to donate them to other families who might be facing similar challenges. The knowledge and contacts they had gained could help other parents who felt as lost and desperate as they had felt. William thought about his royal duties and the work that waited for him. He was eager to return to his responsibilities, but he would never again take for granted the privilege of being present for his family. The months in Switzerland had taught him that being a good father was more important than any official duty. As they prepared for bed, he could hear soft laughter from their children's rooms as siblings shared stories and played quiet games together. The sound of their complete, healthy family settling in for the night was the most beautiful music they had ever heard. Kate kissed William goodnight and whispered that they were the luckiest people in the world. They had been given back their child, their family, and their future. The nightmare was over, and their new life as a family that had survived the impossible was just beginning. Looking back on their journey from fear to hope to healing, William and Kate knew they would never be the same people they were before their child got sick. They were stronger, more grateful, and more aware of how precious every ordinary moment with their family really was.